Welcome to a special bonus episode of Cinemaholics. I'm John Negroni, and he's Will Ashton. Hey, Will.
What up?
He is a man called Will.
That's true.
We're doing a bonus show because Will finally managed to catch A Man Called Otto. What took you so long, Will?
Well, I had a screening of it.
It's set in Pennsylvania. Shouldn't there have been screenings months ago?
Not only set in Pennsylvania, it's set in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, Pencil. Did it look like it? Like, were you kind of spotting certain things like you were with Cha Cha Real Smooth?
No. I mean, this movie, I feel like, kind of exists in a weird fantasy version of Pittsburgh, but I can discuss that in a bit more later.
Yeah, hold that thought, I guess. I was going to ask you, too, because I was looking out for you in this movie. I was like, is he a secret extra? Because sometimes you do that.
Not in this one. There is a movie coming out this year, which I think you know about. Say? But I'm not allowed to say about yet. Not allowed. But that I was an extra, and I don't know if I'm going to be in the movie or not. I don't want to speak too soon because, you know, the listeners once upon a time.
We've had our hearts broken before. Where'd you go? Bernadette, American Pickle? I mean...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this could be the third time that, that would be the third time.
I do like the names of all those movies kind of relate to, like, how it's a problem that you're not in it, you know? It's like, oh, it's such a pickle. It's like, where did you go? Like, kind of fits.
Though, I mean, I did like that American Pickle movie. I don't even know if you can watch it anymore because it's on HBO Max.
Yeah, they got rid of it, huh? But no, we're going to talk about A Man Called Otto, which I checked out a couple weeks back. I think right before the holidays, or maybe it was right after.
Oh yeah, I didn't answer your question.
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer? Do you want me to give the whole spiel about how I saw the film now, or wait until later in the episode?
Well, yeah, you said that you watched it at a screening, but you want to tell the story. The listeners, Will's got a story for you. Sit down. Crisscross applesauce.
Story is a bit generous for what this is going to be, but so I guess in late December, I got my screening invite for A Man Called Otto, which I was kind of expecting because, like you said, it was filmed in Pittsburgh. Generally speaking, the movies that are shot around here, they give a little screening to for us. You know,
and I'm going to look up while you're talking when our screening invite was, because I didn't go. I got a screener, but yeah, let me see.
Yeah, hoity-toity John Negroni over here got a screener.
You know,
he didn't have to leave his dang house to watch this movie like me. He's like, I can be like Otto. I can just stay at home and be grumpy watching this movie.
But yeah, no, something happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, something happened is a bit of a stretch, but so I got a screening invite for, I guess that was January 10th to see this film, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. The movie's supposed to come out January 13th, at least in wide release. I'll go and see that screening. And then I noticed that the theater where they're going to be screening the film a few days before that, actually a week before the screening was supposed to happen, they were playing the film.
They jumped the gun.
And yeah,
they're like, we can't just wait for somebody to call Otto. We're going to call him up right now.
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, it was already playing at the theater I was seeing this advanced scrinto at. So
you walked past the theater and like people were literally like watching the movie while you were being like, huh?
No exaggeration, yeah. When I walked into the theater, I looked up and I saw on the billboard that, like, you know, I could go to a number of shows to see this film as a paid member of the public.
Yeah. What was the publicist like? Where they were just like, all right, no spoilers. We want to preserve them.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is like, I kept like, I didn't say this outright to them, but I was kind of just like, hey, like, when I RSVP, it's like, hey, I'm going to RSVP for this January 10th screening of the film. And they were like, okay, good. We'll see you there. I'm like, okay, nothing fishy here. And then like the next day, because I was in my head, I was like, okay, maybe they like misprinted the date. Yeah, it was actually supposed to be the Tuesday before. And like, I had a reasonable excuse if I didn't get to go because I was like,
I think they messed up, Will, because I'm looking at it right now, and that was the date of the screening in San Francisco, Tuesday, January 3rd.
Well, in any case, the next day,
sorry, we haven't said too, it was in limited release before this. It came out limited release December 30th.
Yeah. But the next day, like that Wednesday, after I presumed the screening had already happened, I sent him another email just to kind of like poke the bear a little bit more and be like, hey, I forgot to mention I was going to bring a guest. Is that okay? And I was expecting emails like, oh, I'm sorry, that screening actually happened yesterday. Were you misinformed or whatever? And they were like, okay, no problem. And so I was like, okay. So I guess this is they're just gonna keep this going, I guess. And then, the day of comes, and I was talking to a friend, and I was like, hey, I have this screening for this movie. Would you like to go? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. I wanted to see a movie. He's like, okay, I just gotta, preface this by saying that I don't know if the screening is actually going to happen because the movie is already out. So it kind of defeats the purpose of an advanced screening, but there's, at least a semi-decent chance that we're going to go see a free screening of a film that's already playing there. He was like, okay. So we went, and I was, still fully just thinking like, okay, they're going to, tell me the screening isn't happening. I'll just have to go pay to see it. No big deal. But then I turn the corner and I see, a full line of people waiting to see a movie that's already playing there. Yeah.
They got their like free tickets on the radio. Like, I get it.
Not only that, but like they had like a cutout billboard of the poster you could like stand in front of and stuff. And
it's like an event.
So I guess what it happened is that this was actually a screening for the Pittsburgh Film Office, and that I guess they just invited press to attend. So actually the screening was filled with people who had worked on the film in various positions and jobs. And that was actually a pretty nice experience.
That's pretty cool. So you got to sit with like the director, Tom Hanks.
Yeah, exactly.
There,
Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
I did have that experience with not with Tom Hanks being there, but with Won't You Be My Neighbor, like the people from the crew, like Mariel Heller was there, like the widow of Mr. Rogers was there and stuff. That was like kind of more of a glitzy premiere. This is like a little bit more refined in that respect. Right. But yeah, no, they just the whole night everyone just kind of pretended, I guess, that this movie wasn't already playing. And it was just an advanced screen that wasn't advanced. Yeah. Which is fun, I've never had an experience like that before. So that was my experience watching the film.
Yeah. I don't think I've had an experience like that where it's like literally playing at the theater. If it did, I forgot, but how funny is that? Well, I'm glad that you didn't pull an Otto and get all grumpy about that situation. So let's talk about this movie. Because
I was petty enough to like push it, but not just outright ask, like, is this screening still happening? I was just kind of just like, let's just see what happens.
Well, I knew something was going on because you were kind of like, as soon as you watched the movie and you walked out, you're like, all right, I got to talk to John about this. Because you then read my review on In Between Dress. And apparently you didn't give me any information on besides that you read it, but yeah, that you wanted to talk about it with me. I don't know what's about to happen. I don't know if I'm about to get chewed out and then some right now on this show. I'm hoping that's the case. But I famously, as people have been apt to call me out on, I did not give this movie a good review. I was a bit negative on A Man Called Otto. Did you see what the score I gave it?
You gave it 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10.
5 out of 10. What? I don't know.
Well, that would be 5 points out of 10 possible points.
Okay. Not like
fake movie points.
I thought you were going to do something from the film, like 10 or
5
cookies
cats,
out of 10 cookies
5,
or
Chevy Avalanches.
Yeah. I could go dark with this, but I don't really want to jump the gun a little bit.
I was like, don't do it. Don't do it. But no, you're more fresh on the movie. I remember most of it, and I think that my main thing with the movie, and I'll set it up and everything, is that it's very much, I said this in my review, it's very much like this here's the upside. It's an American remake of in this case, a Swedish film. So Upside was a remake of, I believe it was a French film, if I'm not mistaken. But it's based on a novel called A Man Called Ove by Fredrik Backman, and the Swedish movie came out in 2015. And I believe Man Called Ove, like, I believe it was like a awards, contender. I vaguely remember it having a bit of a campaign.
2 Oscar nominations.
Yeah. And of course, we had to get our remake of it, right? The American remake, because people can't read subtitles. And so I think one of the next high profile ones, right, is going to be the one with, it's going to be the remake of Another Round. They're doing that one, right?
Yeah, that's what they say. I always try to take these, foreign language to English language remakes with a grain of salt until they actually happen.
Sure.
Because I remember when Parasite came out, HBO was like, oh, we're going to do some sort of continuation with this with like Adam McKay producing, and then like Mark Ruffalo is going to star or something in it. And I don't know if that's still in the works or not?
Yeah,
but
we haven't really heard anything about that since, right? I
Yeah.
don't know if they put the kibosh on that. I hope so.
Yeah.
Because what a terrible
I mean,
idea.
there would be some sort of poetic justice, I guess, if the quarantine prevented that show from happening. But
I'm not seeing. I'm seeing the last news story for it is that Tilda Swinton dropped out of the show.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured.
That was in October 2022. So apparently it's still happening, but it doesn't look like it's close to production at the moment, as far as I can see.
But yeah, I mean, there was like that. I know there was like a Tony Erdmann remake that was being flirted. I think that might also be dead at this point.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like you said, another round, which I still haven't heard any updates on that since it happened.
I still need to see the movie.
You never saw Another Round?
I never saw it.
Wow.
No, I that was during the time when I wasn't getting screeners like I do now. So I was kind of, in between movies at that point. I wanted to see it. I reached out and everything, but nothing happened.
You were in between movies, but not in between drafts yet.
There you go. But yeah, as for this movie, we're getting it 7 years plus from when the last movie came out.
Yeah.
And I have seen A Man Called Ove. I don't know
I was
if
going to
you
ask.
have.
I have not. No, I was going to try to. It just didn't work out. I haven't read the book either.
See, I do think that it will influence, your opinion. I do wonder, like, maybe if watching A Man Called Otto fresh will let people give it a pass more. But it's generally kind of hard to go from the original to the remake here, because it's like, I've seen too much. I've seen this done like competently. But anyway, what's the setup? Because I don't know, maybe I'm being mean, and you're gonna give this movie, like, who knows, a B plus.
I think you're kind of presuming how I feel about this film.
I am. I'm just kind of curious. I love it. The future
I didn't
isn't
tip
anything.
my hat as far as how I feel about the film.
I'm just putting.
clear.
I want to fight. We haven't fought in months. We're like the opposite of if we were like a married couple, it's like, I want to sleep on the couch. I want to. Anyway,
you want that zest in the relationship.
I want that heat, that passion. But okay, the movie follows. You guessed it, A Man Called Otto. He's played by Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks, who's playing a much grumpier character than he usually does. I know he's done grumpy characters before. Who's the first one you think of? I'm blanking though.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that, like, he has built this persona of being, this kind of friendly everyman type of guy, or even sort of a whimsical, mystical sort of good guy, like in Forrest Gump. And I feel like, there's been times where he's kind of pushed against that a little bit, like in, like The Burbs, or more recently, like some of his characters in Cloud Atlas have been a little bit more prickly than we're used to seeing from Tom Hanks. But I feel like post Won't You Be My Neighbor, he's been trying to kind of be a little bit more antagonistic in the type of roles he plays. For instance, I feel like a film like Finch, which I feel like most people have forgotten by this point, has that character had a little bit more of an edge to him. He was a little bit grumpier. He was gruff. Yeah, wasn't he? By Tom Hanks standards, he was like mean. Okay. And then you have him playing the Colonel in Elvis. And, he's just like a real son of a gun in that movie, And then you have this movie where he's like deliberately trying to play against type, but also not really. Like, it's very much a Tom Hanks Playtone production. But it's also him trying to, like, kind of stretch his legs and be someone that we're not used to seeing from Tom Hanks. And I find that to be kind of interesting. That's where I was going with this conversation earlier, is that, like, I didn't want to have it because I thought there'd be a lot of, like, push and pull. I just wanted to talk about this film because I think it's kind of interesting in the scheme of Tom Hanks's star persona and career at this point.
I gotta admit, I'm still a little. I feel like 2022 was just not his year. I think he's 0 for 3 for roles between Elvis and Pinocchio and A Man Called Otto. I mean,
never did I think I was going to be in this position to say this, but you're not giving Elvis enough credit, man. It was a pretty good film.
I'm sorry, but the more I thought about Elvis since seeing it, look, I still go to bat for that movie in some respects, but hey, look, the listeners can rewind the tape on our conversation. I think Tom Hanks's character is the big weak spot of that movie.
I disagree.
I can't stand that performance. I think it didn't ruin the movie for me, but it soured it a lot. But yeah, you disagree, and that's all fine,
John.
But
Show business is no business.
Before that, though, I think that he was on quite a roll. I mean, News of the World, I thought, was a solid showcase for him. Finch, as you mentioned, and you know, I think Greyhound was a surprisingly good, good time, like tight movie.
Solid
Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, one of his best performances in years.
I agree there. Yeah. I was gonna say, like News of the World, solid, kind of forgettable. Same, I would say for Finch and Greyhound. Greyhound, he also wrote. Like they're like solid films, but I feel like like they didn't really like move the needle much. And you could say the same about Pinocchio too, which came out this year. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Elvis was like the film for him this year, whether you like it or not. And clearly, John doesn't like it, but that was the Tom Hanks movie of 2022. It was the movie that gave Tom Hanks the coronavirus, and for better or for worse, it's gonna probably be a good showcase for what's going to come for Tom Hanks.
Excuse me, Will, but the movie that gave Tom Hanks the coronavirus was Borat's subsequent movie film. So,
yeah.
Better get your facts straight. Yeah. Anyway, as I was saying before, the movie follows a grumpier than usual Tom Hanks, which I think it's fun. It's fun to see him kind of moving around these different roles lately, and I appreciate that from him. So he is a retired widow. He's living in these kind of like condo suburbia, which I wonder if that's kind of getting at where you were saying like fantastical Pittsburgh, because at no point did I really buy that was Pittsburgh, but I was kind of curious if it was just because I've never been to Pittsburgh, but I've seen movies set in Pittsburgh and it just looked I thought it was in Seattle, and I literally was like watching it and I was like, are we in Seattle? Is this Seattle? That looks like Seattle. But then I was like, no, because it's set in Pennsylvania. I know it's Pittsburgh. You've told me. So yeah.
No, I mean, I didn't know for sure until the movie made a point to address whether this was actually supposed to be Pittsburgh.
Right.
For
and it's
the
like
first
set in Yeah.
For the first like 20 minutes or so, I'm like, is this? I mean, I know it's filmed in Pittsburgh, but is this like supposed to take place in Pittsburgh? Because like you mentioned, Where'd You Go, Bernadette? Pittsburgh had to fill in for Seattle in that movie, and so there is a precedence for this sort of thing.
And I don't know why that keeps happening necessarily, but whatever the case, I just genuinely, I was like, this feels and looks like the Pacific Northwest. Maybe it's the lighting. I don't know. The house design, again, I haven't been to Pittsburgh. I can't say. But all that said, he has this very prickly personality to the point where he was literally kicked out of the homeowners association. He loves machines. He's obsessed with cars, but he has like a sort of a brand loyalty to Ford. He's an all-American in that sense.
Machines make sense, John. People do not make sense.
There you go. Well, that's what I was about to say. He's kind of cold. He's kind of calculated like a machine. If there's anything that he cares about more than, order and following the rules, it's other people following the rules. So if he sees somebody, being an idiot, he's going to be like, idiot, idiot. He has like that catchphrase and all of that. So anyway, I think that this movie, you know what? I am going to mention this. We do see his son. His son plays a younger version of him, Truman Hanks.
Yes, not Colin.
Not Chet.
And certainly not Chet. Though we do get to hear Chet Hanks' White Boy Summer very prominently on the soundtrack here.
It pays to have fathers in high places. But I was wondering if like Tom has ever had to be that to Chet. Just like
I mean. You got to give the movie at least a little bit of credit in that never did I ever expect to see, asshole version of Mike Birbiglia coming out having a confrontation with asshole Tom Hanks while White Boy Summer by Chet Hanks is playing on the soundtrack.
It is like a producer Mad Libs kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, so the idea is that he's kind of feeling like ever since his wife died, he doesn't have a place in the world. Everybody frustrates him, and he's just sort of like, what is the point to all this? And along comes this new family of neighbors. One of them is Marisol, who is played by Mariana Trevino, and she shows up with her kids and her, as he would say, nitwit husband. And, you know what kind of movie this is. They slowly start to warm his heart and they start to turn him around. And it's a movie kind of about the neighborhood. It's like, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood meets, this basically. And, look, I think ultimately the movie's pretty harmless. There's not that much in it where I'm just kind of, revolting. But I do think there are some like trigger warning deserving things that happen that I certainly was like, I wasn't sure if they were going to do it because I was like, I wonder if they're going to sanitize this more. And I was thinking they were, because I was like, they're really not kind of like setting it up well for those things that happen to happen. The trailer doesn't have any of that stuff in it.
No, it does not.
It doesn't, and I'm kind of concerned that some people will watch this and not be aware of that. So I'm going to give the trigger warning now, because I think people should be aware of it. Like, the movie heavily, like, prominently features, and in a lot of ways, is about suicide. And so if that's something that for people can be a tough thing, you know, like, I think they should be aware.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you about with the previous film. Is that, do they tackle that as directly as this movie does?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's
so
kind of
that's
like
carrying over from the source. They didn't like double down on this version for it.
Right. And okay. I do think that, but I gotta say that the tone of this movie doesn't quite, it's such a tricky balance. I'm not saying it would have been an easy thing to do, but they are sort of going for this like bubblegum pop music sort of aesthetic, very much like The Upside, you know? And then they're still including, I think, a very European dry, dark humor to it. That is just, it's oil and water, at least to me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I guess, and maybe it's because I didn't read the book or see the previous film, I found it, I guess, to be more tolerable than The Upside or Downhill, which was, you know, a English language remake of Force Majeure. Maybe because, like, you know, Force Majeure was like such a good film, and I felt like, you know, both The Upside and Downhill were like so like exhaustingly mediocre that I just found them to be way more tedious in this film, which I also think is a fairly mediocre film. But I found it to be mediocre in a sort of charming, begrudgingly charming, I guess I should say, way. Because, like you said, like those sort of eccentricities to the film kind of made it a little bit more shapeless and a little bit more sort of like hard to parse through as far as like what the intent of it was. And I think it certainly made the film weaker, but also made it a little bit more interesting to dig into, if that makes any sense. Like the fact that I still don't really know exactly what Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, who are both producers on the film, were trying to do here. I mean, I'm kind of looking at it through the lens of like Tom Hanks kind of wants to push the envelope as far as like what he's doing in like the twilight phase of his career. And I think he kind of wants to challenge his screen persona, maybe challenge himself as an actor, and maybe allow audiences to see a version of himself that we're not used to seeing. But it also just feels very sanitized. Like it's like he is like the grumpiest grump ever. But in the first 5 minutes, we're going to be like, but he's not racist. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, he's a good guy. But he's also kind of an asshole, and he's like gonna call people out and call them idiots. But like, you know, he's still got a good heart and all that stuff, and he's struggling. And it's just like, you either can go with the Gran Torino approach, or you should just kind of make "Won't You Be My Neighbor." It feels like it's kind of trying to be both at the same time, and it's just a very weird balance.
So okay, I do have a question then, because as I was watching this, and I'm curious if you picked up on the same thing. I kept thinking that his younger version, you know, I was waiting for a moment when we really see the connection between like why he, like how he becomes the older version of himself, you know, because it does feel like it's like two totally different, like I get it, like he got older and stuff, but I feel like we barely even see hints, you know? Yeah,
I mean, he's like so ornery and like, you know, such a curmudgeon, those like Tom Hanks scenes, but then in the Truman Hanks scenes, he's like, golly gee, gosh darn, gee whiz, I'm just in love, you know, life is good, you know, I'm just a good-hearted American boy. And I mean, there's obviously supposed to be like the turning point where it's like, this is when his life fell apart, and like that's when he kind of realized the cold injustice of the world. But it does feel like a very abrupt shift, even though the movie's trying to build up to it. It doesn't. Yeah, I don't think it feels fully earned. It seems like the two halves of the film are meant to be so tonally different that they never really quite found the right balance by doing so.
I kept finding so many of these characters unbelievable. The whole thing where like everybody in the neighborhood is like always out and about and talking to each other, and like I was like, this just feels like a fantasy. Like this just does not strike me as realistic, and like everybody knows each other's names, and like I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but it just and down to like how pushy the new neighbors are about like being friends with them.
Yeah, I was kind of two minds on that. Initially, I was like, kind of like, what are we doing here? What's happening? But then when I realized the movie was deliberately not trying to be super realistic and it was kind of going for that sort of whimsical tone that you would expect from a Tom Hanks vehicle, it made me kind of realize like, oh, okay, I get what this movie's doing. I don't know if it necessarily works, but I can kind of understand that we're in Larry Crown mode. We're not like in
right. Yeah, that's a good
real life mode.
Did it make you cry?
I don't cry in movies, so it did not make me cry.
I mean, yeah, I'd be the first to know, huh? You would text me and like probably call me.
It would have to. It would be the second film to ever make me cry, which I don't think I was expecting it to.
A Man Called Otto.
Yeah,
yeah, it's not Mulan, that's for sure.
Well, wait, do you know what movie ever? The only
you won't
movie
tell
ever?
Me. You're just like,
have I never told you?
No, you said that I did, and I forgot, and so now you're punishing me.
Yeah, it's Rugrats in Paris. That's the only movie that made me cry. Yeah.
No other movie since, huh?
Yeah, no, that's it.
I wasn't that far off with Mulan, was I?
You were a little far off.
I have seen though, because I didn't cry. I didn't really feel anything with this one, but people, I saw a lot
dead,
of responses.
says John Negrodi.
No, but I've been seeing a lot of people being like, this movie is very emotional. I had all these emotions. It broke my heart. I'm crying.
Yeah, I mean,
all this stuff. I'm like,
we got a message from a listener who was talking about how much the movie affected them emotionally. That's
right. Listener named Alex. Shout out to them. And yeah, because we did see it, and I want to know like what is it that's clicking with people for this movie? Because it's not like I feel like we're the outliers here, aren't we?
Well, hang on, don't get twisted, son. Because that's the thing for me. That's why this is an interesting film for me to discuss. Is that I don't think it's a very good film. Like I don't think it really works. But I do think it's fairly effective, if that makes sense. I see.
So you think it has the emotional sort of heft or like a manipulation?
I think it does. And it's like, it's kind of fascinating because it's like the exact opposite of Otto's approach to life, where it's like things are supposed to run in this very sort of efficient, direct way, like what you're supposed to see with the machine. It's how it's supposed to work. I feel like all the gears are kind of flying off with this thing and it's not quite coming together, but yet somehow by the end of it, it is kind of touching and sweet. And it's just that classic Tom Hanks formula where it's like, clearly he is trying to deviate away from that, but he just can't really as a producer. I think he just is so dead set in that kind of boomer, good-hearted, golly gee America vision that he can't really push too far outside of it. And
it's a feel-good movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And it kind of operates in that zone of like Hallmark movies. Like it is kind of designed, it's manufactured. It is in its way meticulous about how it's going to plug at you. You know, how it's going to, all right, here's how we're going to make people fall for this character.
I mean, it's basically, the way I see it is that it's basically The Grinch told in the style of like a Hallmark movie, but in the style of Larry Crown.
That's a lot of styles.
Sure, exactly.
Too many styles for this movie.
Well, that's what I mean, though. The movie's like operating in like 3 different modes throughout, though.
Mm-hmm. I do want to come back to it because I agree with you. I do think that like plenty of people watching this. I said it in my review. I said that this has schmaltz, that has the same, sort of appealing factor that movies like The Upside have, that people are going to watch and have a reaction to. That's probably going to be positive and uplifting in some ways. But
that's. The thing is, I just remember being very cold on The Upside. And this, like, I wasn't that cold on.
You were one of the few, though. I mean, a lot of people like that movie.
I like the original one. What was that one called?
Untouchables, yeah.
Untouchables, yeah.
Same
or Intouchables.
Intouchables.
Yeah.
I don't know how you say it in French. But no, I got to come back to the main family. And look, I have nothing against this actress, Mariana Trevino. I found this character a little silly. And I don't know how you feel about her, but she's
supposed to be silly.
silly in a way where I was not buying it. I was like, if the whole thing is it's going to emotionally manipulate me, she felt a little bit too like, I know we've said this, but fantastical, mythological. Like people like that just don't really. I mean, they exist, but like the way that she like, I don't know, something about it like rubbed me as
you thought it was
dishonest.
a manic pixie dream neighbor.
Sure, let's go with that. Manic pixie dream mom.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to the dynamic and a character like that, but I don't know. I found it a little bit, again, a little bit silly. And I think that it's a key factor for this movie working on, I think, some people, and those people being me.
I would agree, because I thought her performance was the highlight of the film.
So you would agree?
I would agree in the sense that I thought her performance was strong, and I thought she was the emotional key of the film. I don't get why you're being such an Otto about this.
Yeah, I'm just like 80. I don't know. I just didn't like it. I had a negative reaction, and you know, I think looking at it, there's good stuff in here, sure, and I'm happy that movies like this are coming out where like, okay, the whole family can enjoy it to an extent. I think the Suicide stuff sort of limits that to like, I wouldn't bring kids to see a movie like this, but
sure.
Otherwise, like I think that it, you know, it's kind of a wholesome adjacent, and it's nice to see that movies like that can still come out. What I find confusing is that this movie cost $50 million.
Sure. And
Sony acquired it for $60 million.
Okay.
So what's going on there? Because the box office is not, you know.
This is an independent production?
This is, well, it was acquired. So I think I can look it up. But
I just thought it was just a Sony in-house film. I didn't realize it was produced outside of Sony and they acquired it.
It looks like, there are a few production companies aside from Columbia Pictures. But yeah, no, Sony acquired the film. Maybe it was the rights. It was one of those things. I think they acquired the film itself, though. That's my guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know this is like on the back burner for Tom Hanks for a while. And then I guess just sometime during the pandemic, he's like, I'm finally going to make this movie. And he did.
Yeah, okay. So they got it after the movie was made. They pre-bought the rights to the film for $60 million at the European film market. And I do think this movie kind of has that, it does kind of have that like Sundance flavor to it in some ways. Like there is a type of Sundance, maybe like a movie like Downhill, you know?
Well,
where...
yeah. I was going to say very similar to Cha Cha Real Smooth, which is also shot in Pittsburgh.
Sure.
And I felt like that was probably the most comparable to this, because I felt like that was another sort of mediocre Pittsburgh film that almost kind of works in spite of itself in some ways,
sure,
but also doesn't work at all at the same time.
It is doing well considering it's not in a lot of theaters right now. It is going to be opening wide in a couple days after we record this. But a bit of a hill to climb. Do you see this movie making like over $100 million? Like, do you think that's going to happen? Seems like a long shot to me.
In like 2011, maybe. Now I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit of a question mark. People are going to go just for Mike Birbiglia because he's an A-list actor.
I like Mike Birbiglia. To be clear, like I'm a big fan of his. Yeah, I've met him once in New York.
I didn't know you guys were friends.
Yeah. But I found his casting, I guess, inspired, but also sort of confusing in this film.
I think it works. It's similar to the Tom Hanks performance, kind of being against type a bit, but you know, in a way that feels right to the actor. Is
it against type though? It's like kind of playing into his image, but like, what if Mike Birbiglia was an asshole? Which is like just sort of, I don't know if it really works, but it's like interesting, I guess. Like,
I think it's very different because like when we've seen him before, he tends to be like certainly somebody who has like a cynical approach to the world, but is also very
socially
soft,
awkward,
like gentle, and but also like somebody who's a little bit more sensitive who wouldn't just be like this ruthless corporate.
So that's what I mean. It's taking that element out of it, but I feel it's that same sort of like guilelessness and that kind of like.
So like, what if Birbiglia hadn't gone through his sleepwalk with me?
Yes, exactly.
Sort of thing. Like that's what he would have turned it into. Sure, I could buy that.
Yeah, and that's why I find the casting so interesting. But the character is so rote in like two-dimensional that there's no real sense pontificating on it because there's just nothing there to it. It's just like, he's just a suit, basically. The suit's doing most of the performance, I feel, for him, unfortunately. Because I think he's a talented actor, and I hope he gets back in the directing at some point.
Sure. There are a lot of other characters. I mean, the neighbor characters come in on here. I think everybody does a fine enough job. I thought there were some like interesting choices, like to try to sort of update certain things. We don't have to get into everything because spoilers and all that. To the point where like I don't even remember if Man Called Ove even had some of those plot elements. It has been a while, but yeah, I mean that's basically what I think of the movie. I don't have too much else. What about you?
Well, yeah, I guess we should kind of talk about the suicide stuff because I mean, we were talking about The Whale not too long ago, and you were kind of meaner on that film than I was.
And sorry, I forgot to say this is Marc Forster who directed it. And
we should talk about Marc Forster. Yeah,
I said in my review that like this fits on the shelf next to his other movies pretty realistically. Finding Neverland, Stranger Than Fiction, Christopher Robin.
That's the thing, right? Is that like he's ultimately an inconsistent at best director who's made some films I've liked, like Stranger Than Fiction is probably his best one. What else? Christopher Robin was pretty good, I felt.
Do you like Kite Runner?
Oh no, that was a bad adaptation of that book.
I didn't watch it, but I remember it being a deal. Quantum of Solace, one of the worst James Bond movies.
That one was actually kind of fun, I felt.
You got it. You always have the hot takes, huh? I like World War Z. Okay,
see, that's a bad one. Yeah, we're disagreeing on the Marc Forster stuff. Yeah, World War Z is a bad movie. I'm
a big fan of the World War Z book. I like that the movie didn't try too hard to be the book. I like that it kind of did its own thing. But
that still doesn't make it a good movie, though.
No,
it's
still
but it
helps.
a boring mess, except for like one cool chase scene.
It was very boring. Come on.
I mean,
but anyway,
yeah. I will throw you a little bit of a bone that like is Quantum of Solace a good film? I don't know, but I think it's a fun film.
It's pretty bad. But hey, we can agree with Stranger Than Fiction. I would say that's probably his best movie.
Yeah, I think it's his best. Find Neverland's fine. It's very Oscar baity. This is also very Oscar baity. He also has that Wonder spinoff with the Nazis that was supposed to come out next year, and then they were just like, let's not release that right now.
I mean, yeah, I think they have it like ready to go basically at this point.
That's what I mean. Yeah, they were like going to release it last year. There were trailers for it and stuff. I remember seeing the trailer before Thor and Love and Thunder and turning to my brother and be like, "Can you guess what's going to happen in this film?" It's like, "No." It's like, well, wait until you watch this trailer, buddy.
I could just imagine somebody watching the movie Wonder and just being like, wow, that was amazing. They're doing a prequel of this? I can't wait.
Oh, okay.
And then just waiting, like, when are they going to come out with this?
Okay, I thought you were going to say, like, this movie's pretty good, but you know what it could use?
Yeah.
Helen Mirren and the Nazi party.
But anyway, what were you saying? You wanted to get into the suicide stuff?
I guess. I mean, it just feels like, we were talked about already as far as like the tonal stuff, but like, I felt like the score for this movie was really bad, and it's like
Thomas Newman, who's such a reliable composer.
Yeah, I mean, most of the times I'm like cool with him, but I felt like the score was really what was holding this movie back a lot of the time.
Really?
So I felt like a lot of these like heavy scenes, like scenes that were supposed to be serious, but like have like kind of darkly comedic moments to them, were undercut by the score. I was like, boop, boo doo, ba doo, ba doo, da doo, and like
I felt like that was intentional. And I know, I'm not saying it was correct.
It never felt organic to the scene, and it felt like it took me out of the film constantly because it's like, how am I supposed to be feeling in the scene? I don't know, because the score is like trying to make it seem goofier than it is. Like, even when the scene's supposed to be fairly serious, it seems like the score is trying to be like, no, it's actually a little bit goofy, it's a little bit silly, even though what's happening on screen isn't very silly. I just felt like I thought it was an uncharacteristically bad score from him.
Yeah, because I mean, the guy's made incredible scores for the longest time. Even movies I don't like, but okay. Anything else?
I thought it was weird that they shot this movie on 35 millimeter, considering that's mostly, it mostly takes place in this cul-de-sac. Like, it's not very
I didn't even know it was shot that way. I just assumed it was in digital.
Nope. I mean, when I was watching,
it looked like it.
I was like, this image is crisp. I was like, unless this is like some sort of like Knives Out situation where they tried to duplicate the image of film. They shot this on film, baby. And I was right. It was on 35.
Wow. Yeah, because I didn't even suspect, but it's probably because again I saw it on a screener, so it's not going to be as crisp as a projected. Because I'm assuming was this did this theater have like real projectors or is it all digital?
No, it was all digital. Yeah, they didn't project this on film. That would have been amazing, but no.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of those left, huh?
I believe, not to promote the theater where I work, but I believe the Harris Theater is the only theater in Pittsburgh that can still project on film, which is how we were able to project Memorial on 35 this past year. That's
pretty cool. Yeah, I think there are theaters like around the Bay Area that have it, but they just don't use them regularly. But I'm not totally sure about that.
I get emails from them that talk about they do 35 stuff.
Yeah, the Roxy does advertise that, but a lot of the other indie ones, like, they might have like a special event. I don't know if the Draft House, the Alamo Draft House does. Never looked into that.
There's that restaurant that projects on 35. That's next to the
Foreign Cinema does that. So it's a cool time to be into film, but yeah, not like it used to be. It used to be just the way of the way of the world.
Yeah, those were the days. Also,
the movie's too long.
This movie's too long?
2 hours. It's over 2 hours. No, this movie only needed to be 90 minutes. The flashbacks needed to be cut down. Come on.
I mean, this is 10 minutes longer than the previous Man Called Ove movie.
I'm just saying. And that movie also a little long too. I'm not going to lie to
you. All right.
Not a perfect movie. That's all I got unless you want to get into the Rotten Tomatoes game.
How about social media journalists?
Social media journal? What?
That's like this movie has a very sort of like,
for
lack of a better word, silly idea of how the internet works.
Well, it does. It does the sort of
it does a lot of stuff that
Gen Z.
Yeah, I was gonna say because I'm surprised you didn't remember this because it's like all the stuff that grinds your gears about like online culture, where it's like this video is all over the internet. It got 1 million views, man. You're an internet sensation.
Didn't I send you that Instagram reel where it's like, whoa, I think this video went viral and has like 13 hits.
Yeah. Well, isn't that what was that movie? Mainstream? Isn't that kind of poking fun of that too?
Mainstream does that, and I love watching Shark Tank because like so many of the people with the businesses come on and they're just like, we made this video for our product and it went viral, and then they'll ask like, how did it go viral? And they're like, it got 10,000 views.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Social media journalism, like literally showing up at her house, like that doesn't even happen with like real newspapers anymore. Unless you watch She Said.
Yeah, I mean, they not only show up to his house, but they have business cards that says social media journalist. And I like that even Otto is just like, what is this? And it's like, I agree with you, Otto. What is this?
I wish Otto had been like, this doesn't seem like any sort of social media journalism. Right.
Yeah, it's like, you call yourself a social media journalist. However, your ethics leave a lot to be desired. For one thing, just like going into, I wish they had done something like that. But I don't know.
We both just watched that movie Vengeance and we both kind of were clowning on it. And I'm going to say about that movie Vengeance that it at least has one character who says something at least somewhat smart about how this stuff would go, where the Ashton Kutcher character is just being like, look, you can, like her filming the guy, right? And like, oh my gosh, you've been exposed. But that Mike Birbiglia wishes that the Ashton Kutcher guy could have been there because he would have been like, hold on.
Yeah, that was the other thing is that like they were filming live on like an actual like camera, not like a camera, like a hand camera that like you take photos with, was somehow live streaming this event. It was just like, this movie has such a warped perception of like technology and the internet and journalism. It's just, it baffled me to no end. And it kind of adds to the mythical, whimsical, fantastical quality of the film. That
in a way, it makes me wonder because like people 50 years from now watching this be like, wow, this was what life was like in 2022. But if they, well, I guess 2023 and then it's officially out. But it makes me kind of wonder, like, how many times have we watched movies from like the 50s, the 40s and 30s, and have like assumed certain details are accurate when they're so totally off? I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, that was the main thrust, I guess, of the stuff. I was going to talk about. I mean, I don't know. I guess I kind of admire the film more than you do as far as how it handles the depressive aspects of Otto's
You're showing
character.
up at this movie's door, offering it some food, being polite.
Yeah.
You know it has it's rough around the edges, whereas I'm just sort of like calling it an idiot and driving away.
Exactly, yeah. Happening. I don't know. I mean, I think it means well. I think it's very sort of tonally confused. It doesn't help that, it comes from a director who's not very consistent in their work, and probably a team of producers that I think are trying to make like two different kind of films that go against their interest as far as like what their star wants to do and what people expect of them. And also like, I don't know, it's an interesting film. It sometimes kind of feels like we said before, like Gran Torino, very conservative film. It feels like a conservative film made by liberals at times in a way that I didn't quite know how to make of that. But
yeah, it's an interesting mishmash. It's trying to be all things to all people, and it can't.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
My advice is just watch A Man Called Ove. It's much better.
Yeah,
it's a good watch.
I guess.
Good sit.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I can't hate it. It's in the Berg. This is just what Yinzers are like.
That's what it comes down to. You're rooting for the neighborhood because it's your
but not home. The neighborhood.
I kept looking around. I was like, "Is that Will Ashton's apartment? Is that Will Ashton's apartment?"
You'd have a better time finding my apartment in Cha Cha Real Smooth, which actually filmed in actual parts of like where I live.
Okay. Yeah, Pittsburgh, bigger place than I certainly think.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's play the Rotten Tomatoes game. 138 reviews counted. Will, what do you think the score is?
76%.
A bit off. It's in the 60s. Give you one more guess. Narrowing it down for you.
65?
That's a little bit higher, 68%. So in between your guesses there. Yeah, it's been wavering. I think it was at 66 for a bit, and then it kind of moved around. It's only 138 reviews so far. Probably a bunch more reviews to come. What about the audience score? We have 500 plus.
If my
Verified
audience is a proper indication, this response is high. But then again, like I said, my audience was people who worked on the film.
Sure.
So maybe a little skewed. But I think audiences will be a little bit more receptive to it. I'm going to say 82%.
Oh, it's much higher. When you said it's hot, I was like, oh, is he going to get this? It's 97.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the right track. Just I didn't trust myself enough.
You doubted yourself. It happens. I don't think we have a cinema score yet because it's not in wide release. I'm checking. Yeah, we don't have it. Probably if there is going to be one, it's probably going to be, we're probably a bit from that, a few days. But what about Letterboxd? It's pretty low right now. We don't really have like a good, this won't be like a very good sample. We only have 8.8 thousand watches. That's obviously going to increase a lot. But yeah, what's your best guess anyway?
3.2?
3.6. A bit higher. And that kind of tracks. I'm mostly seeing like 3s and 3.5s on my Letterboxd feed here. I still don't get the tagline. There's so many other better taglines they could have done, but like fall in love with the grumpiest man in America. Come on. There's no way he's the grumpiest man in America. He's not even, he couldn't compete.
Not in I mean, this, like I said, a very sanitized version of America.
If this is the grumpiest man in America, then like QAnon doesn't exist. And
well, that's what I mean. Like this movie so deliberately skews politics.
Yeah, it's like
skews,
Which
I feel
Obama
is very
had won like a third term.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, it just feels like a very like Obama era. That's what Larry Crown is that like
right.
It's a movie trying to tackle, like the recession and these like very 2010s things, but in a very sort of sanitized, clean, out of touch with reality sort of way. And I feel like that's what this movie is for like gentrification and the housing crisis and nothing about like the pandemic or anything like that, but like things are in a broad sense related to now, but not really connected to any sort of realistic reality.
I'm gonna pick out one popular review and then we can say goodbye. This is from Joe Aragon. Is it bad? No. Is it better than the original? No. Did we need an American remake? No. Do I wish I watched Megan a second time instead? Yes. That's my favorite one.
Here's my question for you, John, and I don't know if you can answer it, but I'd be curious to hear what your answer is.
Yeah.
If
I
we
hope
are
it's related to Megan.
if we are to get another one of these like English language remakes in the near future, which we probably will at some point, what movie would you suggest giving that treatment to?
I would be interested, believe it or not, in a Bacurau kind of American movie.
Okay.
But like really still keep the grit of that movie, and even though it's set in America. I think that could be really cool. Because like with a really good budget, I think that movie could go even harder.
Sure, yeah. I mean, definitely, like I said, like really leaning more into like the Western aspects of it. Like not as much.
Yeah, exactly. Because like Bacurau has so much commentary and political commentary that I think jives with ours like really well. So that's first off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would certainly be more intrigued with that than something like A Man Called Otto, to be sure, or even Another Round, which I feel like. I mean, what's that movie? It's just going to be pretty much more or less the same film as the original, I would presume, except just in English language and presumably worse. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, who would you get to direct that English language background?
I feel like it's got to be somebody who's really passionate about the movie, and I don't know who that is. I would hope that it's like an indie filmmaker, you know, somebody who should just getting their start. You know, I would
pick Jeremy Salander, or who's the guy who did Green Room?
Jeremy Saline.
Yeah, I'd get him.
Blue Ruin was his other one.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah, something like that.
He'd be my pick.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, well, it's been fun.
Okay, you don't want to ask me?
What?
No, just kidding.
We'll be back soon to do our best movies of the year. Have you already made your list?
Well, I made like an early list for in between drafts when you asked me,
right.
or rather insisted that I make one.
I just asked politely. That's all.
Yeah, but you were like, "Come on, put this list together for me." And I was like, "Fine, here's my list." And you were like, "Oh, okay," and didn't expound upon it. I was like, "What does that mean?"
Making all of this up. But all right. Oh, you know what is another movie though? I do want to watch that. I don't think we'll get to, but man, I really want to watch Broker, but I have no way to watch it.
Yeah, that comes out in my neck of the woods this weekend.
Yeah, it's probably going to be playing around here, but I just don't have time. I hope to see it though. I'm really excited.
Speaking of which, do you think an English language shoplifters would work? I'd say no, but I'm
not really.
That's at least more potential with that one.
I think similar. It's the same kind of thing with Parasite. It's the same kind of thing with A Man Called Ove. It's so specific to the location, and yeah, it's dicey. It could work. I don't know.
That's the reason why I'm usually against these English language remakes. That like they're so tied into their culture. In this case, like this feels like such a Swedish film that's just being transported to America. You know, presumably.
I think that's why like I just immediately chose a Brazilian film, because I just feel like Brazil and America parallel each other a lot, and so they tend to be a bit more. I don't know. I feel like we're able to relate more, but
yeah,
they just had their own January 6th the other day.
Oh yeah. If we want to talk about politics head on, sure.
I think I'm good. So, all right, we'll see y'all next week. From the Internet California, I'm John Agroni,
and for the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Weston.
See you next time.
Bye.